makes a city? People? Buildings? Horrific traffic jams? That's not too far off. It turns out that roads are what connect all the parts of a city. We need easy paths to travel from place to place and for moving materials, supplies, and services. And in some parts of cities, slums, that's not happening. The world's slums lack not only large, easy-to-travel roads, but they're also missing a lot of the infrastructure that goes along with them. Street signs, building numbers, and vehicle access to building exteriors. That lack of connectivity means that the billion people living in slums can't reliably get their mail, get to work, or even get to the hospital in an emergency. Trash removal and sanitation are difficult at best. Now, scientists are trying to transform slums with a mathematical approach to urban design called topology. Slums can be broken down into two components: infrastructure, like homes and stores, and the access network that links them, nodes and connections. With this framework, connections, in effect access, can be optimized. This new approach has already been used in 2 slums within Cape Town, South Africa. In one of the 2 neighborhoods, most essential services provided by the city, water, toilets, electricity, trash removal, are on the outskirts where road access exists. But the inner portions of the settlement, where temples are completely cut off. In this study, scientists used satellite data and detailed maps handmade by locals to diagram all the nodes and connections of the settlement. They then used their topological algorithm to figure out which areas were inaccessible by roads, then generated the most cost-effective ways to build roads and connect them to outside services. In topology, since one block of buildings surrounded by roads is considered equivalent, settlements with a wide range of shapes and sizes, from the suburbs of Las Vegas to the slums of Mumbai, can be analyzed in the same way. The scientists who designed the program hope to come up with a user-friendly interface that can be used by communities around the world. That, they say, would put the decision-making power into the hands of locals, who can determine if proposed access roads will accommodate their priorities, then reroute them accordingly.
Informal settlements have been an integral part of urbanization over the last few decades. Slum dwellers are particularly vulnerable to spatial, social, and economic inequalities, dependence on precarious income generation and livelihoods, poor health, lack of affordable housing, high vulnerability to the adverse impacts of environment, climate change, and natural disasters. Significant initiatives have been implemented to improve the living conditions of slum dwellers within the framework of the Millennium Development Goals. The proportion of urban population living in slums fell from approximately 39% in 2000 to 30% in 2014. More than 320 million people gained access to improved water, improved sanitation, durable housing, or less crowded housing conditions. The proportion of people practicing open defecation fell almost by half since 1990. Despite such reduction, the absolute number of slum residents continues to grow due to the accelerating urbanization, population growth, and lack of appropriate curative and preventive policies. This number is expected to increase up to 3 billion by 2030. This phenomenon is causally linked to the persistence of poverty and inequality, non-inclusive policies excluding people from decent work and livelihood to attain individual and collective progress. Addressing the above challenges and achieving slum upgrading at scale requires mobilization of further resources, partnerships, and political commitment towards improved policies and approaches put in place for building on the successes and lessons from the previous frameworks. The Participatory Slum Upgrading Program, or PSUP, addresses exactly that. This module has been developed in the framework of the implementation of PSUP. It aims at providing decision makers, government officials, practitioners, community members, academics, and all the stakeholders engaged in slum upgrading with guiding principles and tools to institutionalize and put them into action. Now, let's dive deeper into PSUP and the key objectives of this module.
Latin American cities continue to deal with explosive growth, so governments are looking at ways to improve the poor communities in the region. CCTV's Martin Markowitz reports.
It was once known as largest slum. Now, it's become a thriving community. Basic services like hospitals, schools, and modern transportation routes are now a reality for residents in Ciudad Neza, a Mexico City suburb of 1.2 million people. Back before the improvements, community leader Jorge Martinez remembers growing up without the services that he says many people now take for granted.
We were born as rebels. To get these services, the people had to fight for them. We had to organize to get water. Before, we had to walk 2 to 3 kilometers just to bring the water to our homes. In order to get electricity, we had to extend cables to the avenues.
In the 1970s, workers organized strikes to demand action from the federal government. And they got results. Land ownership was finally recognized, and money was pumped into the city to provide services and improve the quality of life.
Despite these improvements, extreme poverty and inadequate housing remains a major problem here and across Mexico. According to the World Bank, 11% of Mexico slums.
That is why urban planners are looking at Ciudad Neza as a model. Instead of slum clearance, they believe that upgrading these neighborhoods through partnerships with the private sector can be more effective than spending millions of dollars on giant apartment complexes.
I think Margaret is a kind of success story of a very Mexican, at least Latin America, but at least a Mexican way of doing things. You know, I think the Mexican way of doing things is that the informal system has worked in the sense that it's not for everybody, but it has produced a city that is sort of more or less livable.
While government coffers remain low, it might be that this informal system is the only sustainable option for poor countries to deal with an ongoing slum crisis. Martin Markowitz, CCTV, Ciudad Neza, Mexico.
So what have we learned from this video? We have learned so many things, so many ways in which slums can be fixed. They can be turned into cities, into virtues of the world. But what does the government do? Nothing. They take it for granted and just leave it like that. So tell me, is this really going to fix anything? We need to take a step further into fixing slums, into fixing the future of the world. We need to do this, if not with the government, by ourselves. Thank you.